Module Overview. This module provides an in-depth, comprehensive exploration of fundamental rights and civil liberties, which are the cornerstone of constitutional law and democratic governance. It examines the nature, scope, and classification of these rights, their historical development, and the various legal mechanisms employed to protect and enforce them. The module further delves into the tensions between individual freedoms and societal interests, limitations on rights, and the evolving landscape of rights in modern constitutional states. By mastering this module, you will gain a robust understanding of how constitutions enshrine civil liberties and how courts and institutions interpret and safeguard these rights, balancing them against public order, security, and other competing interests. 1. Understanding fundamental rights and civil liberties. Definition and distinction. Clarifies the terminology, fundamental rights as constitutionally guaranteed freedoms essential to human dignity and liberty, and civil liberties as specific personal freedoms protected from government interference. Classification of rights: personal rights, life, liberty, privacy, freedom of expression, religion, and conscience. Political rights: voting, participation in governance, freedom of assembly and association. Economic and social rights: right to education, work, health, and social security. Group rights: rights of minorities, indigenous peoples, women, and disabled persons. Natural rights versus legal rights. Discussion on philosophical origins in natural law and their codification into positive law. 2. Historical development of civil rights. From Magna Carta to modern charters, traces the historical progression of rights protections, including English Bill of Rights, U.S. Bill of Rights, French Declaration, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR. Civil rights movements, analysis of key movements that expanded rights protections, including abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights movement in the U.S., and global human rights campaigns. Legal mechanisms for rights protection. Constitutional provisions. Review of key constitutional clauses and bills of rights that guarantee civil liberties. Judicial enforcement. Role of constitutional courts and human rights commissions in interpreting rights and providing remedies for violations. Legislative and executive roles, statutory laws and policies aimed at protecting or restricting rights, and their interaction with constitutional guarantees. International human rights law. Influence of international treaties, conventions, and customary international law on domestic constitutional rights. Limitations and restrictions on rights. Justifiable restrictions. Rights are not absolute. Explores legal doctrines permitting reasonable limitations to protect public order, morality, security, or the rights of others. Tests for limitation. Proportionality test, necessity, legality, and least restrictive means as criteria for valid restrictions. Controversies over limits. Debates on surveillance, hate speech laws, emergency powers, and balancing competing rights. 5. Balancing rights and public interest. Conflict of rights. Situations where rights clash, e.g., freedom of expression versus protection from hate speech, and judicial approaches to resolution. State interests. Legitimate government interests and the challenge of maintaining social order while respecting rights. 6. Emerging and contemporary rights issues. Digital rights, privacy, freedom of expression, and data protection in the age of technology and social media. Rights of vulnerable groups, gender rights, minority protections, rights of refugees and displaced persons. Environmental rights, the right to a healthy environment as an emerging fundamental right. Globalization and human rights. Challenges posed by cross-border issues, migration, and international human rights enforcement. Case studies and examples. Landmark cases such as Brown v. Board of Education, racial equality, Roe v. Wade, privacy and reproductive rights, and Obergefell v. Hodges, same-sex marriage. Constitutional protections under various legal systems. Role of the African Charter on human and people's rights in regional rights enforcement. Learning outcomes for Module 3. Upon completing this module, you will be able to define fundamental rights and civil liberties and understand their scope and classifications. Trace the historical evolution of civil rights protections globally. Analyze constitutional and legal frameworks protecting fundamental rights. Understand the principles governing limitations and restrictions on rights. Critically evaluate contemporary rights issues in digital, social, and environmental contexts. Apply knowledge to assess real-world cases involving civil rights conflicts.